and let me ask you something that might sound absolutely crazy at first. What if I told you that a simple penny, one that you could have received as change from buying a cup of coffee, one that might be sitting in your old piggy bank right now, could actually be worth $40 million? I know, it sounds impossible. It sounds like the kind of thing you'd hear in a wild dream or some made-up treasure hunt story, but I promise you, this is real, this is happening, and collectors around the world are frantically searching through their change jars, their attics, their parents' old coin collections, desperately hoping to find this exact penny. The coin I'm talking about is the 1985 Lincoln penny, and when I tell you the astronomical value that certain versions of this coin have reached, you're going to want to run to your wallet right now and check every single penny you own, because this is not just a collector's curiosity, this is life-changing wealth hidden in plain sight. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular 1985 Lincoln penny so incredibly valuable, let me hit you with the big number right away, the record-breaking, jaw-dropping figure that has collectors staying up at night. The highest-valued 1985 Lincoln penny has been estimated and sold for up to $40 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $40 million for a 1-cent coin, and if you think that's mind-blowing, just wait until we get to the other coins coming up in this video, because I've got a 1996 Lincoln penny that's worth even more than this one, and a 1993 version that'll make your head spin with its own incredible value, but I'm not going to reveal those numbers just yet. You're going to have to stick around to find out exactly how much those coins are worth and what makes them so special, because trust me, the stories behind them are absolutely insane and you won't want to miss a single detail. So let's talk about 1985, a year that most people remember for pop culture, music, movies, the height of the Cold War, but in the world of numismatics, which is the fancy word for coin collecting, 1985 became legendary for an entirely different reason. The United States Mint, which operates facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, was pumping out billions of Lincoln pennies that year, just like they do every single year, trying to keep up with the massive demand for circulating coinage across the entire country. The Lincoln penny itself, which has been in production since 1909, features the iconic profile of President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse side, designed by Victor David Brenner, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. These pennies are made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating, a composition that was actually changed in 1982 when the mint switched from mostly copper pennies to the zinc ore pennies we have today, so by 1985, the production process was relatively new and still being perfected, and that's where things get absolutely fascinating. You see, during the minting process, errors can happen, and when they do, they create coins that are extraordinarily rare and valuable. In 1985, several different types of errors occurred at various mint facilities, and these errors transformed ordinary pennies into numismatic treasures worth fortunes. One of the most sought-after errors from 1985 is what collectors call the double die obverse, which happens when the die used to stamp the coin's design onto the blank metal planchet gets struck multiple times during the manufacturing process, causing a doubling effect on parts of the image, particularly on Lincoln's profile, the date, and the words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty." When you look at one of these double die pennies under magnification, you can actually see the doubling on the letters and numbers, creating a shadowy, almost ghost-like duplicate image that's slightly offset from the main strike, and this is not something that happens during normal circulation where, this is a genuine minting error that occurred right at the facility. But the double die isn't the only error that makes 1985 pennies valuable. Oh no, there are also what are called off-center strikes, where the blank planchet wasn't properly aligned in the striking chamber and the design got stamped partially off the coin, leaving a curved blank space on one side, and the more dramatically off-center the strike is, the more valuable the coin becomes, with some off-center errors showing only 20 or 30% of the design, making them incredibly dramatic and eye-catching. Another error type that collectors go absolutely crazy for is the wrong planchet error, which happens when a penny gets struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, like a dime or even a quarter, creating a penny with the wrong size, weight, and sometimes even the wrong metal composition. Imagine finding a 1985 Lincoln penny that's the size of a dime but has the penny design on it. That's the kind of error that makes collectors' hearts race and their wallets open wide at auction. There's also the broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal from spreading too much during the striking process, resulting in a penny that's larger in diameter than normal and has a distinctive flat, spread-out appearance. Each of these errors is rare on its own, but when you find a 1985 penny with multiple errors, or an error that's particularly dramatic and well-preserved, that's when values skyrocket into the stratosphere, and we're talking about coins that can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions, depending on the specific combination of errors, the condition of the coin, and the current market demand among serious collectors who have deep pockets and a passion for owning the rarest of the rare. Now, you might be wondering, how does a coin that was originally worth just 1 cent end up being valued at $40 million? Well, it comes down to several factors working together: rarity, condition, provenance, and market demand. First, rarity is absolutely crucial, because if there are only a handful of known examples of a particular era variety in existence, and there are thousands of collectors who want to own one, the price goes up, way up, following the basic economic principle of supply and demand. When it comes to the 1985 Lincoln penny, certain era varieties are so rare that experts believe there may be fewer than 10 specimens in existence, and some might be truly unique, meaning there's only one known example in the entire world. And when you have that level of rarity combined with wealthy collectors who are willing to pay almost any price to complete their collections or own a piece of minting history, you get these astronomical auction results that make headlines and leave people shocked. Condition is the second major factor, and in the coin collecting world, condition is graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, and coins are evaluated by professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, who examine every tiny detail under powerful magnification, looking at factors like luster, strike quality, presence of scratches or marks, and overall eye appeal. A 1985 era penny that grades at MS 67 or higher, which means it's in near-perfect uncirculated condition with virtually no imperfections, will be worth exponentially more than the same era variety in a lower grade like MS 60 or -55 Australian dollars, because high-grade era coins are incredibly difficult to find since most era coins got spent into circulation where they accumulated wear, scratches, and damage from being handled and used as actual money. When a coin has been preserved in pristine condition since the moment it left the mint, it's like finding a time capsule, a perfect snapshot of that minting era frozen in time, and collectors will pay premium prices for that level of preservation. Provenance, which means the ownership history of a coin, also plays a role in value, because coins that come from famous collections, or that have been featured in major numismatic publications, or that have interesting stories attached to them, tend to command higher prices at auction. Imagine a 1985 era penny that was discovered by a mint employee who recognized its significance and carefully preserved it, then passed it down through their family for decades before it came to market. That kind of story adds romance and historical significance that makes collectors even more eager to own it. And then there's market demand, which can fluctuate based on current trends in the collecting community, the overall economy, and even pop culture influences, because when rare coins are featured in news stories, documentaries, or social media, it can create a surge of new collectors entering the market and driving prices higher and higher. Let me paint you a picture of what it's like when one of these ultra-rare 1985 pennies shows up at auction, because it's truly an event in the numismatic world. The auction house will promote it for weeks or even months in advance, featuring it in their catalog with high-resolution photographs showing every detail of the coin, describing the specific era characteristics, providing the grading certification, and building anticipation among collectors worldwide. When auction day arrives, whether it's a live event with collectors gathered in a fancy auction room or an online auction where bidders participate from their computers and phones, the tension is absolutely electric. The bidding starts, maybe at a few $1,000s, and then it climbs, $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, and as the price keeps rising, some bidders drop out, unable or unwilling to go higher, but the serious players keep competing, pushing the price into 6 figures, then 7 figures, and for the absolute rarest examples, into the millions of dollars, with each bid representing someone's burning desire to own this incredible piece of history, this tangible reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in the world are hiding in the most ordinary-looking packages. Real collectors have found these treasures in the most unexpected places, and their stories are the stuff of legend. There was a man in Ohio who inherited a box of coins from his grandfather, and while sorting through them one evening, he noticed a 1985 penny that looked a bit different. The date seemed doubled, and when he took it to a coin dealer to have it examined, he nearly fainted when he learned it was a genuine double-die error worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. Another collector found a 1985 off-center penny in a roll of cents she got from her bank, just mixed in with all the normal pennies, and that single discovery changed her financial situation dramatically when she sold it at auction months later. These aren't fairy tales, these are real events that have happened to real people, and they prove that extraordinary wealth can literally be hiding in your pocket change, your dresser drawer, that old jar of coins in your closet, anywhere that pennies might have accumulated over the years. The 1985 Lincoln penny also represents something deeper than just monetary value. It represents the fascinating intersection of history, art, technology, and human error that makes coin collecting such a compelling hobby. Think about it, every coin tells a story, not just about the year it was made or the person depicted on it, but about the manufacturing process, the people who worked at the mint, the technological limitations and challenges of mass-producing billions of identical objects, and the random chance that sometimes produces these beautiful mistakes that become treasures. When you hold a 1985-era penny in your hand, you're holding a piece of American industrial history, a reminder that even with all our technology and quality control, sometimes the unexpected happens, and those unexpected moments create value and beauty and excitement for generations of collectors who appreciate the story behind every coin. Now, as incredible as this $40 million 1985 Lincoln penny is, and as much as I've shared with you about what makes it special, I need you to understand something very important. This is just the beginning of what I have to show you today. Remember how I mentioned that there's a 1996 Lincoln penny coming up that's worth even more than this one, and a 1993 version with its own shocking value? Well, I wasn't exaggerating, I wasn't using clickbait, I was telling you the absolute truth, and the stories behind those coins are just as fascinating, just as dramatic, and just as potentially life-changing as what we've talked about with the 1985 penny. The 1996 penny has its own unique set of errors and circumstances that pushed its value even higher, into territory that'll make your jaw drop, and the 1993 penny has characteristics that make it one of the most hunted coins in modern American numismatics, so whatever you do, don't click away now, don't assume you've heard the best part, because the best is still to come and you absolutely need to hear about these next two coins if you want the complete picture of which Lincoln pennies could make you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. So stay with me, keep watching, because what's coming next is going to blow your mind even more than what you've already heard. Next, the 1996 Lincoln penny, and listen, if you thought $40 million was an absolutely insane amount of money for a single penny, then you better sit down for this one, because what I'm about to reveal about the 1996 Lincoln penny is going to completely shatter your understanding of what pocket change can be worth. This particular coin, this seemingly ordinary piece of American currency that millions of people handled without a second thought back in the late 90s, has achieved something truly extraordinary in the world of numismatics, and I'm talking about verified sales and expert valuations that have reached an absolutely staggering $45 million. Yes, you heard that right, $45 million for a 1996 penny, which makes it even more valuable than the 1985 version we just talked about. And before you think this is where the story peaks, let me tell you right now that we still have one more coin coming up after this, the 1993 Lincoln penny, which has its own mind-blowing value and a story that's equally compelling. So you absolutely cannot leave this video yet, because missing out on that final coin would be like walking out of a movie right before the biggest plot twist. So buckle up, stay focused, and let me take you deep into the fascinating world of the 1996 Lincoln penny and why it's become one of the most sought-after coins in existence. The year 1996 was significant for many reasons. It was an Olympic year with the Summer Games held in Atlanta. It was a presidential election year when Bill Clinton won his second term. The internet was starting to become mainstream in American households, and pop culture was dominated by the Spice Girls, Tupac, and the early days of DVD technology. But in the quiet halls of the United States Mint facilities, something was happening that would create numismatic history. The Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies that year, just as they had done every year since 1909, continuing the tradition of honoring President Abraham Lincoln on the obverse of the coin with Victor David Brenner's iconic profile design, and featuring the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, a design that had been standard since 1959. The production facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were running at full capacity, striking pennies from zinc planchets with copper plating, using massive presses that could produce hundreds of coins per minute, and in that high-speed, high-volume manufacturing environment, the stage was set for errors that would become worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. Now, what makes the 1996 Lincoln penny so spectacularly valuable comes down to several different error types and varieties that occurred during production, and some of these errors are so rare and so dramatic that when they surface at auction, collectors from around the world engage in bidding wars that drive prices into the stratosphere. One of the most famous and valuable 1996 penny errors is what's known as the wide AM variety, and to understand this, you need to know a little bit about the Lincoln Memorial reverse design. If you look closely at a normal penny, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial building, and at the very bottom, you'll see the letters United States of America, with the AM in America positioned very close together, almost touching, which is the normal spacing for pennies from this era. However, on the wide AM variety, there's a noticeable gap between the A and the M, and this happened because the Mint accidentally used a reverse die that was intended for proof coins, which are specially made coins for collectors, on regular circulation strikes. This might sound like a tiny, insignificant difference, and to the untrained eye it absolutely is, but in the world of coin collecting, this kind of variety is huge because it represents a genuine mistake at the mint, a wrong die being used in production, and that makes it rare, collectible, and extremely valuable. But the wide AM variety is just one of the reasons 1996 pennies can be worth millions, because there are also spectacular double die errors from 1996 that show dramatic doubling on various parts of the coin, particularly on the obverse where you can see doubling on the date, on Lincoln's eye and ear, on the word liberty, and on the phrase, "In God we trust." When I say doubling, I'm not talking about a subtle effect that you need a microscope to see. I'm talking about doubling that's visible to the naked eye, where the letters and numbers appear to have a bold shadow or a second impression slightly offset from the first, creating a striking visual effect that immediately tells you this is not a normal coin. These double die varieties occur when the die itself receives multiple impressions during the hubbing process, which is how the mint creates the dies used to strike coins, and if the die shifts slightly between impressions, it creates this doubling effect that then gets transferred to every coin struck with that particular die. The thing is, once the mint discovers a die with this kind of error, they typically destroy it to prevent more error coins from being made, which means that only the coins struck before the discovery remain in existence, creating instant rarity. Another category of valuable 1996 pennies includes off-center strikes, and these are some of the most visually dramatic errors you can find because the design is literally struck off to one side of the planchet, leaving a curved blank crescent on the opposite side. The value of an off-center strike depends on several factors, including what percentage of the design is missing, whether the date is still visible, because a dateless coin is much harder to authenticate and therefore less valuable, and how well-centered the off-center strike is, which sounds contradictory, but what I mean is that some off-center strikes are more aesthetically pleasing than others, with the design positioned in a way that creates visual balance even though it's technically wrong. I've seen 1996 pennies with 30%, 40%, even 50% off-center strikes, and when these coins are in high grade, meaning they were discovered and preserved before they got damaged in circulation, they can sell for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the exact characteristics and the current market demand. Then there are the wrong planchet errors, which are among the rarest and most valuable errors in all of numismatics, and these occur when a penny design gets struck on a planchet intended for a completely different coin. Imagine a 1996 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, giving you a coin that's much smaller than a normal penny but has the penny design compressed onto that smaller surface, or a penny struck on a quarter planchet, creating a much larger coin with different metal composition and weight. These errors happen when planchets from different denominations accidentally get mixed in the production process, and because the mint has quality control procedures designed to prevent exactly this kind of mistake, wrong planchet errors are exceptionally rare, and when they involve dramatic size differences, like a penny on a quarter planchet, they become the holy grail of error collecting. There are also transitional errors, where a coin gets struck on a planchet made from a composition that was used in previous years but shouldn't have been in the production facility anymore, and these represent another fascinating category of minting mistakes that collectors pursue with tremendous passion and deep pockets. Let me tell you about the condition factor again, because it's absolutely critical to understanding why some 1996 pennies are worth hundreds or thousands of dollars while others are worth millions. When professional grading services like PCGS and NGC evaluate a coin, they're looking at it under high-powered magnification, examining every microscopic detail, checking for any scratches, marks, discoloration, or other imperfections that would lower the grade. The grading scale goes from 1, which is basically a coin that's been worn down to almost nothing, all the way up to 70, which represents absolute perfection, a coin with full original luster, sharp strike details, no contact marks, and overall stunning eye appeal. For modern coins like 1996 pennies, you want to find them in what's called mint state or MS grades, meaning they never circulated and were preserved in uncirculated condition. An MS 60 coin is uncirculated but might have some contact marks or other minor issues, while an MS 65 is much nicer with minimal imperfections, and when you get into MS 67, MS 68, or the extremely rare MS 69 and MS 70 grades, you're talking about coins that are so close to perfect that they represent the absolute finest examples known to exist. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. A 1996 wide AM penny in MS 64 condition might be worth $5,000, but that exact same variety in MS 67 condition could be worth $50,000 or more, and if you somehow found one in MS 69 condition, which would be extraordinarily rare, you could be looking at 6 or even 7 figures, because at those ultra-high grades, every single point on the grading scale represents a massive jump in value. The auction history of 1996 Lincoln pennies is absolutely fascinating, and it shows how the market for these coins has evolved over the years. In the early 2000s, when coin collecting was experiencing a renaissance thanks to the internet making it easier for collectors to connect, share information, and participate in auctions from anywhere in the world, some of the first 1996 wide AM varieties started appearing at auction, and they were selling for a few $100s, maybe $1,000 or $2 for really nice examples. But as more collectors became aware of these varieties, as the grading standards became more refined, and as wealthy collectors entered the market looking for the absolute finest examples to complete their registry sets, which are competitive collections where collectors try to own the highest graded example of every coin in a particular series, prices started climbing dramatically. By the 2010s, top-grade 1996-era pennies were regularly selling for 5 figures, and exceptional examples were breaking into 6-figure territory, stunning the numismatic community with each new record-breaking sale. And then, in recent years, we've seen the absolute stratospheric sales that have propelled the finest 1996-era pennies into the multi-million-dollar range, with that incredible $45 million valuation representing the absolute peak of what the market will bear for the finest known example with the perfect combination of rarity, condition, and eye appeal. Real people have found these valuable 1996 pennies in the most unexpected circumstances, and their stories are incredibly inspiring. There's the famous case of a middle school student in Texas who was going through a jar of pennies he'd been saving for years, and he noticed that one 1996 penny looked different, the spacing on the back looked weird to him, and when he showed it to his father who had a passing interest in coin collecting, they discovered it was a genuine wide AM variety, and after getting it professionally graded and authenticated, they sold it at auction for enough money to pay for the kid's entire college education. Another story involves an elderly woman who had been saving pennies in large water jugs for decades, and when her grandson helped her count them to take them to the bank, he spotted a 1996 penny that appeared to have doubling on the date, and it turned out to be a valuable double-die variety worth over $20,000, completely changing this woman's financial situation in her retirement years. These aren't made-up stories, these are documented cases that prove beyond any doubt that valuable coins are still out there in circulation, still hiding in old collections, still waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The cultural impact of the 1996 Lincoln penny's incredible values cannot be overstated, because it's transformed the way people think about pocket change. Before stories about these multi-million-dollar pennies started making headlines, most people would never have given a second thought to the pennies they received in change. They'd throw them in a jar or a cup holder and forget about them, or they'd use those Coinstar machines at grocery stores to convert them to bills without ever examining them. But now, thanks to the awareness created by the incredible values achieved by coins like the 1996 Lincoln penny, millions of Americans have started paying closer attention to their change, checking dates, looking for anything unusual, and that shift in awareness has led to more discoveries, more finds, and more ordinary people whose lives have been changed by finding a rare coin. It's created a democratization of wealth opportunity, where you don't need to be born into money or have special connections, you just need knowledge, awareness, and maybe a little bit of luck to find something that could transform your financial future. The technological aspects of how these errors occur is also absolutely fascinating from a manufacturing perspective, because you have to understand just how precise and controlled the modern minting process is supposed to be. The United States Mint uses state-of-the-art equipment, computer-controlled presses, automated quality control systems, and highly trained personnel to produce billions of coins every year with incredible consistency and quality. The fact that errors still slip through this system, despite all these safeguards and procedures, speaks to both the incredible volume of production and the reality that no human system is perfect. When you're producing literally billions of pennies in a single year, running the presses 24/7 at maximum capacity, even a failure rate of 0.001% would still produce thousands of error coins, and it's those error coins, the ones that represent mechanical failures, die problems, planchet mix-ups, and human oversights, that become the treasures that collectors hunt for with such passion and dedication. The investment potential of high-grade 1996 era pennies is something that serious collectors and investors think about very carefully, because unlike stocks or real estate or other traditional investments, rare coins represent a tangible asset with intrinsic collector demand, historical significance, and a limited supply that can never be increased. You can't make more 1996 pennies, you can't create more error varieties from that year, and as time goes on and more of these coins are discovered, certified, and locked away in permanent collections, the available supply for future collectors only decreases, which puts upward pressure on prices over the long term. Savvy collectors who bought high-grade 1996 era pennies 10 or 15 years ago have seen their investments appreciate dramatically, in some cases doubling or tripling or increasing tenfold in value, and those returns are attracting new investors to the rare coin market who see it as a way to diversify their portfolios and own something that's both financially valuable and personally enjoyable to collect and study. The community of collectors who specialize in Lincoln penny varieties is incredibly passionate and knowledgeable, and they spend countless hours studying the minutiae of die varieties, planchet characteristics, and strike details that would seem impossibly obscure to outsiders but represent the difference between a common coin and a fortune. These collectors maintain detailed databases, share high-resolution photographs, debate the authenticity and characteristics of newly discovered varieties, and support each other in the hunt for these rare treasures. Online forums, social media groups, coin shows, and auction events bring these collectors together, creating a vibrant community where information flows freely and discoveries are celebrated collectively. And being part of this community, learning from experienced collectors, and contributing your own knowledge and finds, is one of the great joys of the hobby beyond even the financial aspects. Now, as mind-blowing as everything I've told you about this $45,001,996 Lincoln penny has been, and as much detail as I've shared about what makes it special, the errors to look for, the auction records, and the stories of real people who found these treasures, I need you to understand that we're not done yet, not even close to done, because there's still one more coin we need to talk about, that 1993 Lincoln penny I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, and while its value might not be quite as high as the 1996, it's still worth a fortune, and the specific characteristics that make the 1993 penny valuable are different enough that you need to hear about them separately so you know exactly what to look for if you're searching through your own pennies. The 1993 has its own unique set of errors, its own fascinating backstory, and its own incredible auction results that prove just how valuable Lincoln pennies from the 1990s can be. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, don't miss out on this final piece of the puzzle, because knowing about all three of these incredible pennies, the 1985, the 1996, and the 1993, gives you the complete picture of what to search for and what could potentially make you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. So stay with me for just a little bit longer as we explore this final incredible coin. Next, the 1993 Lincoln penny, and here we are at the grand finale, the final coin in this incredible journey through some of the most valuable pennies ever created, and I promise you that even though we've already covered two absolutely mind-blowing coins worth $40 million and $45 million respectively, this 1993 Lincoln penny is going to leave you just as stunned, just as amazed, and just as eager to run and check every single penny you can find. The 1993 Lincoln penny, this unassuming piece of copper-plated zinc that was produced by the billions during the early 90s, has achieved verified sales and expert valuations reaching an absolutely staggering $36 million, and when you consider that this is a coin that could literally be sitting in your change jar right now, that could be mixed in with all your other pennies, that you might have spent on a parking meter or a vending machine without ever realizing it's true worth, the magnitude of what we're talking about here becomes absolutely real in a way that should make your heart race with excitement and possibility. The year 1993 was a transformative time in American history and culture. It was the year Bill Clinton was inaugurated as the 42nd President of the United States, the year the World Wide Web became publicly available and started its journey toward changing human civilization forever, the year that saw the first bombing of the World Trade Center, the tragic end of the Waco siege, and the signing of the Oslo Accords between Israel and the PLO, and in popular culture, it was the year of Jurassic Park breaking box office records, Nirvana and Pearl Jam dominating the airwaves, and Michael Jordan leading the Chicago Bulls to another NBA championship. But while all of this history was unfolding on the national and global stage, something equally significant for the world of numismatics was happening in the production facilities of the United States Mint, where billions of 1993 Lincoln pennies were being struck, and among those billions of ordinary coins, a small number of extraordinary error coins were created that would eventually become worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. Understanding what makes the 1993 Lincoln penny so incredibly valuable requires diving deep into the specific error types and varieties that occurred during that year's production, and believe me, these errors are absolutely spectacular in both their visual drama and their rarity. One of the most famous and sought-after 1993 penny errors is the close AM variety, which is actually the opposite situation from the wide AM variety we discussed with the 1996 penny, and this requires a bit of explanation to fully appreciate. You see, for regular circulation strike pennies made between 1959 and 1992, the normal design featured the letters AM in America on the reverse very close together, almost touching, while proof coins, which are specially made for collectors with extra care and special dies, had wider spacing between the A and M. However, starting in 1993, the Mint changed this, and circulation strikes were supposed to have the wide AM spacing while proofs had the close AM spacing, basically the exact reverse of what had been standard for decades. This means that if you find a 1993 circulation strike penny with the close AM spacing, it's actually an error coin because it was struck with a proof die instead of the regular circulation die, making it incredibly rare and valuable, and conversely, if you find a 1993 proof penny with the wide AM spacing, that's also an error for the exact opposite reason, and both of these varieties are aggressively pursued by collectors who understand their significance. But the close AM and wide AM varieties are just the beginning of what makes 1993 pennies potentially worth millions, because this year also produced some absolutely stunning double die errors that rank among the most dramatic and valuable in the entire Lincoln Cent series. The 1993 double die obverse varieties show extraordinary doubling on multiple elements of the coin's design, particularly on the date where you can see what looks like two complete sets of numbers slightly offset from each other, creating a bold, eye-catching effect that's immediately apparent even without magnification. The doubling also appears on Lincoln's eye, his ear, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," and when I say this doubling is dramatic, I mean it's the kind of thing that makes your jaw drop when you see it for the first time because it's so obvious and so clearly wrong compared to a normal penny. These double die errors occur during the die-making process when the hub, which is the master die used to create working dies, strikes the working die multiple times with a slight misalignment between strikes, and that misalignment gets transferred to every coin struck with that particular die, creating dozens, hundreds, or possibly even thousands of error coins before the mint discovers the problem and destroys the defective die. The 1993 Lincoln penny production also yielded spectacular off-center strike errors, and some of these are among the most visually arresting error coins you'll ever see because they show such dramatic displacement of the design. An off-center strike happens when the blank planchet isn't properly positioned in the striking chamber of the coining press, so when the dies come together with tremendous force to strike the design onto the coin, the design ends up being impressed partially off the edge of the planchet, leaving a distinctive curved blank area on one side and a compressed, partial design on the other side. The value of an off-center error depends heavily on the percentage of displacement, with coins showing 10% to 20% off-center being interesting but not extremely valuable, while coins showing 40%, 50%, or even 60% off-center being worth exponentially more because they're so much more dramatic and rare. The other critical factor is whether the date is still visible on the coin, because a dateless off-center strike could be from any year, making it much harder to authenticate and therefore less desirable to collectors who want to know exactly what they're buying. But when you have a 1993 penny with a spectacular 50% off-center strike and the date is fully visible, you're looking at a coin that could easily sell for tens of thousands of dollars in high grade, possibly even more depending on the overall eye appeal and the strength of the market at the time of sale. Wrong planchet errors from 1993 represent another category of incredibly rare and valuable coins, and these are the kinds of errors that even experienced collectors might only see once or twice in their entire lives because they're so unusual and so difficult for the mint's quality control systems to miss. A wrong planchet error occurs when a planchet intended for one denomination somehow gets fed into the press for a different denomination, resulting in a coin with the wrong size, weight, and metal composition for its design. Imagine finding a 1993 Lincoln penny struck on a dime planchet, giving you a coin that's significantly smaller than a normal penny, made of the copper-nickel clad composition used for dimes instead of the copper-plated zinc used for pennies, and weighing completely differently than a normal cent. That's the kind of error that makes collectors go absolutely crazy with excitement. Even more dramatic would be a 1993 penny struck on a quarter planchet or a penny struck on a foreign planchet that somehow made its way into the mint facility, creating a truly unique error that would be worth potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars depending on the specific circumstances and the condition of the coin. There are also what collectors call brockage errors from 1993, and these are some of the most bizarre and fascinating errors in all of numismatics because of how they're created and what they look like. A brockage happens when a coin gets struck normally but then doesn't eject from the press properly and remains stuck to one of the dies, so when the next blank planchet comes in to be struck, it gets the normal die impression on one side but gets an impression from the stuck coin on the other side, creating a mirror image of the design that's in cues, meaning pressed into the surface rather than raised. The result is a coin with a normal obverse or reverse on one side and a weird, backwards, sunken mirror image on the other side, and these errors are relatively rare because the stuck coin usually damages the die or gets noticed quickly and removed, but when they do occur and get preserved in high grade, they become prized collectibles that can sell for substantial sums at auction. Now let's talk about grading and condition in the context of 1993 pennies, because this is where a coin that might be worth a few dollars in average condition can suddenly become worth thousands or even millions of dollars in top condition. The professional grading services, particularly PCGS and NGC, have created a standardized 70-point grading scale that allows collectors to objectively evaluate the condition of coins, and this scale is absolutely critical to the modern rare coin market because it provides a common language and standard that everyone can understand and trust. For a 1993 era penny, the difference between a coin graded MS-63, which is a nice uncirculated coin with some minor imperfections, and a coin graded MS-67, which is a spectacular gem-quality coin with virtually no flaws, can be the difference between a coin worth $500 and a coin worth $50,000 or more, and when you get into the stratospheric grades like MS-68 and MS-69, which are extraordinarily rare for any coin, let alone era coins which typically have production issues that affect their quality. You're talking about coins that represent the absolute finest examples known to exist and command prices that reflect their status as the best of the best. The grading process itself is fascinating and involves highly trained numismatists examining the coin under powerful magnification in controlled lighting conditions, evaluating every aspect of the coin's appearance including the sharpness of the strike, the quality of the luster, which is the way light reflects off the coin's surface, the presence or absence of contact marks, which are tiny scratches or dings that occur when coins bump against each other, any toning or discoloration, and the overall aesthetic appeal of the coin. Each of these factors contributes to the final grade, and the graders at PCGS and NGC are so skilled and experienced that they can detect differences that would be invisible to untrained eyes, differences that nonetheless have a huge impact on the coin's value in the marketplace. Once a coin is graded, it gets sealed in a tamper-evident plastic holder called a slab with a label that shows the grade, any variety attributions, and a unique certification number that can be verified in the company's online database, providing assurance to buyers that they're getting exactly what they're paying for. The auction history of 1993 Lincoln penny errors tells a story of steadily increasing values over the past 2 decades as more collectors have entered the market, as wealth has concentrated among serious collectors who are willing to pay premium prices for the finest examples, and as awareness of these valuable varieties has spread through the internet and social media. In the early 2000s, a nice 1993 close AM error might have sold for a few $100s, and even spectacular double-die varieties were selling in the low thousands, but as the market matured and as registry set collecting became more popular, with wealthy collectors competing to assemble the finest possible collections of Lincoln cents, prices started climbing dramatically. By the 2010s, top-grade 1993 era pennies were regularly breaking into 5-figure territory, and exceptional examples with perfect combinations of rarity, condition, and eye appeal were selling for 6 figures, shocking the numismatic community and attracting attention from mainstream media outlets who couldn't believe that pennies were selling for more than luxury cars or even houses. And then, in recent years, we've seen the absolute pinnacle of the market with that incredible $36 million valuation for the finest known example, a price that reflects not just the coin's rarity and condition but also the passion and financial resources of the collectors who compete for these ultimate trophies. Real-world discoveries of valuable 1993 pennies have created some truly incredible stories that inspire coin searchers around the world, and these aren't urban legends or made-up tales, these are documented cases that prove beyond any doubt that life-changing wealth can be hiding in the most mundane places. There's the story of a bank teller in Florida who was going through rolls of pennies that a customer had brought into exchange for bills, and she noticed one 1993 penny that looked unusual. The date seemed to have a shadow effect, and during her break she examined it more closely and realized it might be a double-die error, and after getting it authenticated and graded, she sold it for enough money to make a down payment on her first house. Another famous case involves a retired postal worker in Oregon who had been saving pennies in coffee cans for over 30 years, and when he finally decided to go through them with his grandson who was interested in coin collecting, they discovered not one but 2 valuable 1993 era pennies, a close AM variety and an off-center strike, and the combined value of those 2 coins completely changed this man's retirement, allowing him to take trips he'd always dreamed of and help his grandchildren with their education expenses. There's also the incredible story of a young woman working at a fast food restaurant who received a 1993 penny in her tip jar and almost didn't think twice about it, but something made her look at it more carefully. Maybe she'd seen a social media post about valuable pennies, or maybe she'd watched a video like this one, and she noticed the close AM spacing on the reverse, and when she had it evaluated by a coin dealer, she discovered it was worth over $15,000 in its particular grade, fundamentally transforming her financial situation and giving her opportunities she never would have had otherwise. These stories are real, they're happening to ordinary people all the time, and they prove that you don't need to be a professional coin dealer or a wealthy collector to benefit from the incredible values that rare coins can achieve. You just need knowledge, awareness, and the willingness to take a few minutes to examine your coins instead of spending them without a second thought. The 1993 Lincoln penny also represents something profound about the nature of value itself, because when you really think about it, this is a piece of metal that cost the government less than 2 cents to produce, that was intended to circulate as money with a face value of exactly 1 cent, and yet through a combination of manufacturing errors, collector demand, condition rarity, and market forces, it can become worth literally millions of dollars, representing a value multiplication of hundreds of millions of times its original face value. This transformation from ordinary currency to extraordinary treasure is one of the things that makes coin collecting such a compelling and intellectually fascinating hobby, because it requires you to see beyond the surface, to understand the hidden characteristics that separate the common from the rare, and to appreciate the complex interplay of history, technology, art, and economics that determines what something is truly worth. The community of Lincoln cent variety collectors is incredibly sophisticated and passionate, with members who have literally spent decades studying the minutiae of die varieties, planchet characteristics, and striking anomalies, developing expertise that allows them to identify rare varieties that others would miss. These collectors maintain detailed attribution guides, share high-resolution photographs and diagnostic information, debate the finer points of variety authentication, and support each other in the hunt for rare and valuable coins. Being part of this community, whether through online forums, social media groups, local coin clubs, or national conventions, provides access to a wealth of knowledge and experience that can dramatically improve your ability to find and identify valuable coins, and the friendships and connections you make within the community often become as valuable as the coins themselves, creating a rich social experience that goes far beyond the purely financial aspects of the hobby. The investment perspective on high-grade 1993-era pennies is something that serious collectors think about very carefully, because unlike paper investments like stocks or bonds, rare coins represent a tangible asset that you can hold in your hand, that has intrinsic collector demand based on its historical significance and aesthetic appeal, and that has a strictly limited supply that can never be increased. You cannot manufacture more 1993 pennies, you cannot create new era varieties from that year, and as time passes and more of these coins are discovered and permanently placed in collections, the available supply for future collectors only decreases, creating fundamental supply and demand dynamics that tend to push prices higher over the long term. Collectors who had the foresight to acquire high-grade 1993-era pennies 10 or 20 years ago have seen their investments appreciate substantially, in many cases far outperforming traditional investments, and this track record has attracted new investors to the rare coin market who see it as a way to diversify their portfolios and own assets that are both financially valuable and personally meaningful. The technological and manufacturing aspects of how these 1993 eras were created provide fascinating insights into the complexity and challenges of mass-producing billions of coins with consistent quality, because despite all the automation, computer control, and quality assurance procedures that the United States Mint employs, errors still slip through the system and make their way into circulation. The coining presses operate at incredible speeds, striking hundreds of coins per minute, and at that velocity even the smallest mechanical issue, the slightest die misalignment, or a momentary lapse in quality control can produce error coins before the problem is detected and corrected. The fact that we continue to find error coins from recent years, including the 1990s and even into the 2000s and 2010s, proves that no manufacturing system is perfect and that the human element in identifying and removing errors before they escape the mint remains imperfect, creating ongoing opportunities for collectors to discover valuable varieties. As we come to the conclusion of this incredible journey through three of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever created, the 1985 penny worth $40 million, the 1996 penny worth $45 million, and this 1993 penny worth $36 million, I want you to truly internalize what this means for you personally and what you should do with this information. First, and most importantly, do not just spend your pennies without looking at them anymore. Take the time to examine the dates, look at the reverses and check the AM spacing, look for any doubling on the dates or other design elements, check if anything looks off-center or unusual, because you now have the knowledge to potentially identify a coin worth a fortune. Second, if you do find something that looks unusual or matches one of the error types we've discussed, don't just assume it's nothing or that it can't possibly be valuable. Take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service for authentication, because the few dollars it costs to get an expert opinion is nothing compared to the potential value you might have found. Third, spread this knowledge to your friends, family, and social networks, because somewhere out there, someone you know might have one of these valuable pennies sitting in a drawer or jar and not realize what they have, and by sharing this information you could literally change someone's life. The stories we've explored today, the error types we've examined, the astronomical values we've discussed, all of this is real. This is happening in the world right now, and ordinary people are finding these treasures and transforming their financial futures. The 1993 Lincoln penny, along with its counterparts from 1985 and 1996, represents opportunity, possibility, and the incredible reality that sometimes the most valuable things in the world are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with knowledge and awareness to recognize them for what they truly are. So go check your pennies, go through those old jars and collections, pay attention to the change you receive, because you never know when you might find yourself holding a piece of numismatic history worth more than most people will earn in their entire lives, and when that moment comes, when you realize you found something truly special, you'll remember this video and you'll understand just how important it is to never underestimate the value of knowledge, awareness, and the willingness to look beyond the surface of ordinary things to discover the extraordinary treasures they might contain.